Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Mark Lehman, and this is Normalize It Forward. Today, our special guest is Eugene Bertrand. Am I pronouncing that correctly,
Yeah, you
Eugene?
got it. You got
All
it.
right, fantastic, fantastic. Eugene, I would love for you to tell us a little bit about who you are and your background.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Eugene Bertrand, and I am a 23-year-old Master of Social Work candidate at Columbia University. And I am super excited to be here, Mark. I love the great work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Did I hear you say 23?
Yeah, I just turned 23 on Saturday. So yeah,
My goodness, happy
yeah.
birthday. Happy
Thank you, man.
birthday.
I
So,
appreciate it. I appreciate
something tells me you've lived a lifetime already.
it.
Uh,
Yeah, I definitely have. I'm so grateful to still be here on this earth. But yeah, it's been a journey. And I'm really excited to see what the next 23 looks like.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, happy birthday. I would love to hear a little bit about what you're currently doing. You mentioned your new release of the book. Would love to hear a little bit about that. Take us through who is Eugene.
Yeah, so who is Eugene? Eugene is a young man that struggled academically, struggled academically, and was diagnosed with a learning disability at a very young age. I was diagnosed with a learning disability at a very young age, and accompanying that was also an anxiety diagnosis. And when I was very young, my mom always told me, that if you can't reach for your dreams, then you reach for the stars. And I've always kind of used that to kind of just encourage me. And I am also a survivor of domestic violence. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Mhm.
And I almost lost my life last year. And
Wow.
instead of kind of allowing that experience to kind of like define me, what I kind of did was say, you know what, Eugene, like, you know, talk to your community, talk to friends, do EMDR, really kind of entrench yourself in community and just healing. And I dedicated to writing 10 pages a day, Mark, and my book became a bestseller in its first week of its release. And I'm super grateful that it's helping people.
Wonderful, wonderful. First of all, tell us the title.
Yeah, resilience breaking the chains.
Resilience Breaking the Change, bestseller
Yeah.
by Eugene Bertrand. What's it about?
Yeah, so it's heavy. So it's talking about how you can go through an adversity, you can come out with the story of resilience.
Mm,
And it's a fictional book, but it's really honing in on challenging that societal stigma of, men don't talk about their feelings, and just really kind of talking more about male survivorship and just encouraging vulnerability. It's talking about how you can go through domestic violence and just that messy path of that healing, what that looks like, and how you can kind of come out and you can really be okay. And so it's a book that can really kind of provide people with some hope, and with some acknowledgement of what domestic violence really is.
mm,
I think that a lot of people, when they hear the term domestic violence, they think about you being in a relationship, in a relationship with a partner. And of course, interpersonal violence is interpersonal violence, but I think a lot of people tend to forget that family violence also kind of stems within that as well. And that's exactly what my book kind of hones in on.
wow, that is heavy. That is
It's
heavy.
super heavy, man. It's
Yeah,
super heavy.
yeah, yeah. And here you are, 23 years old. You found your way to Columbia
Yeah.
and you are currently studying social
Social
work
work.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Congratulations. That's awesome.
thank you. I'm loving it. Like I'm loving social work so much. And
Hmm.
I think the one thing that I want to mention too is that, it's so important to really, when you're doing this work, to really make sure that you're taking care of yourself. And
Oh, yeah.
I think the one tool that really helped me kind of heal from my situation, and that was before I started writing my book, was EMDR. And
Mm,
that really helped me kind of face the memories I used to run from. Instead of like reliving the trauma, it really allowed me to just reprocess it safely, to
mm.
just kind of see those moments through new eyes. So it was really, really transformative for me, Mark, and just being able to be in a place where like the flashbacks and triggers that once kind of controlled me began to just lose their power. So
Amazing, amazing. So for my listeners, EMDR, a type of therapy that really helps a person process trauma. Eugene, I have lots of questions. I have lots of
Ah,
questions. But you mentioned, and let's start with the topic of men and processing their feelings. You're correct in saying that many men avoid counseling, avoid getting assistance, and that's also one of the reasons why, statistically speaking, the violent, percentages are so much higher, with
right,
men. But beyond that, I think there's lots of reasons why, men avoid sitting with a counselor and talking.
yeah,
If I put you on the hot seat for a minute,
yeah.
why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think that there's that's a heavy question, and I think that it's a lot. I think a lot of reasons why men don't do it is because, societally we've been taught that, you know, men talking about the things that they kind of deal with silently equals to strength. And
Mm,
from a young age, many of us are told to man up and to hide pain, to kind of confuse vulnerability with like weakness, for example. So
hmm
instead of processing what's hurt us, society has continually taught us that we have to bury it. And
mm,
it ends up speaking through things like withdrawal, self-destruction, anger. And I think that could be extremely harmful. And, a lot of times too, men oftentimes carry generational silence, like growing up watching their parents, their fathers, their grandfathers, their uncles, whoever, who've never really modeled emotional openness. I think that also has something to do with it. And,
that's a great point.
I think it could be really damaging, Mark. It's incredibly damaging.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. I think there's so many layers to that. There's culture, there's ethnicity, there's gender, there's all sorts of different factors involved. But
Yeah,
you're 100% right. I mean, I heard this a long time ago myself. And it got me thinking about all the messages as a male I received, through sports, for example, and
right.
if you were injured, I mean, how crazy is this? If you were
Yeah.
injured, right, you were called names if you didn't just
Hmm.
suck it up and get back on the field.
Yeah,
Like, how
exactly.
crazy is that?
Listen, I remember it. I remember getting injured in football and, being called names, but I'm in pain. Like,
Right.
I'm gonna
That's
step
right.
on this field. I'm in pain. You
That's
know what
right.
I'm saying? Like, and we really have to kind of work together to kind of get out of that mindset, because just that discouraging mindset from, when you're very young, it can be super, super, super significant, and that can become somebody's whole personality when they grow up hearing those things,
Yeah.
hearing the discouraging words. They use that to kind of define them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Eugene. And it's interesting. I was thinking about your age. You're starting your clinical career, which
yeah,
is awesome. And
yeah,
you've just written this book and you're spreading the word around resilience and around communication, especially for males.
yeah,
But you're not that much older than a lot of my students I work with,
yeah,
and I see a lot of kids in college, 18 to 20, 23. And so many of my kids that I work with will
yeah,
either say things like, I wish I met you 6 months ago.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wish I did this sooner. And it always gets me thinking, why didn't you?
yeah,
Like what got in the way? Here you
right,
are, you just finished college and you're
right.
in your grad school. And I guess I'm wondering, why do you think it is so many college kids, whether male or female, avoid dealing with their issues?
I think it's because it's scary, Mark. I think it's really scary, and there's also this like huge fear of judgment because like we were talking about, I just turned 22 a few days ago.
Hmm
Excuse me, I just turned 23 a few days
That's
ago.
what I thought you said.
But you
Yeah.
see, I'm still kind of going through the motions. I am 23 now,
Yeah.
but it was just a few days ago, and a lot of folks my age, there's a huge fear of judgment. It's from peers, it's from parents, or even themselves. A lot of it, you have to have that intrinsic motivation to say, you know what, I want to do this. I want to get some support, and I think that admitting pain will make them kind of seem weak, and I'm going to put air quotes around that,
Yeah.
weak,
Yeah.
unstable, or less dependable. But
Mm.
again, I think that's just societal stigma. There's this huge stigma, and there's this huge fear of judgment from so many different people. But you definitely have to have that intrinsic motivation, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Did you see that amongst some of your friends when you were in school?
Yeah, I did. I did. When I was in undergrad, I was a part of this organization called Men Achieving Leadership Excellence and Success. Shout out Eastern. Shout out Eastern. And a lot of the things that we kind of talked about was there were difficult conversations like these. And I think I
Mhm.
have to definitely credit that organization for just kind of helping me kind of see the power of vulnerability, seeing the power of resilience and what that looks like. Because when I came into undergrad, that was during COVID, that was 2020. And
Mhm.
a lot of people were just kind of so shut off. But what I recognized was when we started to kind of come out of the pandemic and people started kind of talking and being more of in a social setting that's not kind of blocked off through a computer, people were so shut off from talking about their emotions. And
Mm.
it was really interesting. And, when I endured my own situation with domestic violence, like we talked about, I sat and I talked to my friends and I was like, this like really just happened to me. And I think it took me kind of coming back to my friends, kind of talking to them about it, for them to kind of say, your story sounds like mine, but I've never said it out loud. And that's when I kind of
Wow.
understood
Yeah.
healing. It's
Yeah.
contagious. When one
Yeah.
person speaks, it gives other people permission to do that and breathe again. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In that vein, can I ask you a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, sure. So
Your journey with domestic violence. I guess I'm wondering, is there a way to capture that story a little bit so that my listeners can hear about and perhaps even resonate with it?
yeah, so I think that my the experience was really, really, really traumatic. And I what I will say is that I almost lost my life, and I never thought that I would ever have lost my life. And I think that it was a difficult experience because while I was dealing with that situation, while it was occurring, and I almost lost my life. I was being attacked. In those situations, you can't help yourself, Mark. You know what I'm saying? And you kind of, in my experience, when you're in those situations, you're kind of faced with that internal conflict of what do I do?
Right.
The the one thing that I kept bringing myself back to was my little brother. So my brother, he's 4 right now. So
Mm,
I'm 23,
mm,
4.
mhm,
And I had to really kind of tell myself, like, what am I gonna do to kind of grow from this situation? I don't know how the situation is gonna end because I saw my life flashing before my eyes. Again, like I mentioned, I was being attacked and I almost
mhm,
died. And I had to tell myself, like, I have to keep fighting. I have to advocate. If I make it through the situation, I have to do this for the next generation because I have to show people like my little brother who are for what vulnerability, resilience, and just strength looks like.
mhm,
But to be very clear, in my situation, I was attacked and I almost died.
mm,
And I think that me kind of coming out of it, I recognized that I could no longer sit, and I would take every single day, to just kind of encourage other people to be vulnerable, not even just about domestic violence, but just have vulnerability in general. It's super
mm.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I interview a lot of people for my podcast, and one young lady I interviewed last year was a suicide survivor.
Yep.
And there aren't a lot of suicide survivors, right? And so
Right.
here she is, she lives to tell what went on for her. And my goodness, she said almost word for word what you just said,
Wow.
you know?
Wow.
And and I think that there's like an epiphany moment where a person recognizes I'm here for a reason,
Right.
and there's people out there that are thinking of hurting themselves and actually
Yeah.
trying to hurt themselves and all sorts of other mental health struggles that
Mhm.
don't need to occur.
Right.
And it does come down to, like you just said, that vulnerability piece, that can I bring myself to tell anybody, a friend, coworker, relative, anybody.
Right.
Doesn't have to be a counselor.
Exactly. And I think that's why I love the term resilience, because resilience can mean so many things, right? But, I think, in my opinion, I think resilience at first it meant endurance. It was just
Mhm.
surviving. But now, like, I've learned to kind of see it as transformation now that
Yeah.
I survived that circumstance. So
Yeah.
it's not necessarily about bouncing back to who I was before the pain, before that situation had occurred, but it's really just about becoming who I've always meant to be through it, through the pain, through the
Yeah.
trauma, through the domestic violence, and being just like your survivor that you're referring to, living to kind of tell the story, to encourage other people, and just really just kind of encouraging them to kind of keep going when times are tough.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's really well said, Eugene. And my listeners, it's interesting. Every show I do, I get emails and texts from people,
Yeah.
and they're always really amazing messages. And oftentimes, I'm hearing from people. Your show allowed me to speak to my son or my daughter about mental health. It's such a weird topic. We're not able to talk about it, but I put your show
Yeah.
on in the car and we listen to it, and that was the catalyst. Or students texting me and saying
Mhm.
things like, your show was uplifting and got me to
Yeah.
realize that I'm really not the only one out there. Even though they
Right.
hear that, even though they
Right.
hear the phrase, it's okay to not be okay, all that,
Right.
kids still feel that they are alone. And,
Right.
until they actually hear individuals talking about it, they just feel that way.
I
And
agree. I think that, it's contagious. Hearing people be vulnerable, hearing people talk about their experience, it's so uplifting and inspiring that it is contagious.
hmm
I think sometimes because I had somebody, my dear friend Shanae Fulton, she's in Middletown, and she is a part of the city council, and she is such an avid advocate when it comes to domestic violence. She's a very dear friend of mine, and she just kind of I really look to her for just so much encouragement and just advocacy. Like seeing somebody advocate in the way that she does for people
hmm
that need it the most
hmm
encouraged me to kind of talk about my story in a way
yeah.
that I hope serves as an upliftment to some people.
Yeah, yeah, it will. It will, Eugene. I can guarantee you that. And I think it is contagious, pardon me, that way. In that, I like people understanding that I think you mentioned this earlier, part of the healing is taking that step,
Yeah.
and recognizing, it's interesting. I was talking to an individual a few days ago, and he was telling me about something I've heard 100 times in the past. And, as a man, I think we can both understand this concept. He was talking about feeling really depressed and really sad. And, he went into the shower to cry,
Hmm.
right? And he talked about that concept of like wiping away his tears and
Yeah.
then walking out of the bathroom pretending
Yeah.
like nothing just happened.
Right.
And I thought, wow, how many men out there can really understand that concept?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I think that people don't really open the space to kind of recognize that, holding space and taking the time is okay. And honestly, taking the shower might sound so simple, but, it's a small act of also just kind of reclaiming your control when
Yep.
you're kind of healing from trauma and depression. And, like if you're stepping into the shower, crying, letting it all out, Mark, and just really recognizing that when everything feels so heavy, even something like the basic self-care can feel impossible. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it's washing off the weight of the day, the guilt, the shame, the feeling of being stuck, and being able to cry and just let it all out. It's one of the few private spaces that we have as men where emotion is allowed. You know,
Absolutely.
when tears can really mix with the water, so you know, and no one has to know,
There's no judgment.
there's
No
no
judgment.
judgment at all,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I think it's interesting because I've literally heard that same story over and over and over again throughout my career from men. And
Yeah.
so it's a common experience. Eugene, if I could ask you to speak directly to my students for a minute, because there are kids out there listening to this, and they may or may not, you know, feel like they've been through something you have been through, but they're struggling. They're struggling with mental health issues, be
Hmm.
it anxiety, be it depression, be it domestic violence, be it, anything under that umbrella. And they haven't told anybody. What's a good first step?
That's a really good question, Mark. I think that if I could speak to your students, I think I would just say that sometimes life is really hard. And
Mhm.
you might feel sad, you might feel scared or even alone. And maybe like you might not know why, but I think that that's okay. And I think we just have to kind of create the space to just kind of say that what you're feeling matters. It doesn't make you weak, but it makes you human. And I think
Yeah.
that sometimes we just need to kind of show people and just simply say that I see you, you
Mm.
matter. And, for example, if you're living with sadness that doesn't go away, or if someone at home is hurting you or someone you love, it's not your fault. Letting people know that they're seen and they're heard and that that they deserve to feel safe can go such a long way. So I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And Eugene, you didn't know this because I didn't tell you, but
Yeah.
my business is my podcast is Normalize It Forward, but my online company is called You Are Heard.
Mm,
And that's exactly why I named the company You Are
yeah.
Heard. I
Yeah.
want people understanding that that is our mission is to
Yeah.
hear people,
Right.
so I love the suggestion. I love the commentary, and I just want students to really listen, understand. Like Eugene has been through it. He's 23. He's young.
Yeah.
He's going to make a hell of a clinician one day. I can
I hope
tell.
so. I hope
I could
so.
tell. But I just want them to hear your words, and I want that to resonate with them. That there are people out there that will listen. There are people out there that will hear them. They just have to get up that capacity to find them and to reach out,
A hundred
you know.
percent. And another thing that I'm gonna say too, Mark, is that taking care of yourself, taking care of your mental health, it's about being brave enough to say, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna face it, I'm gonna ask for help.
Yeah.
And sometimes that bravery really looks like saying, I'm not okay right now.
Yeah.
And that's really one of the most powerful things to ever say in your life, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
totally do. And I think bravery is the exact right word. It's
yeah,
also the catalyst to start the change. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So you get up that courage and it's like that is the pivotal moment, right?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. It's all intrinsic, and the one thing that I tell my clients, the one thing that I do is that I always kind of say it's you versus you. I think in a world that demands so much of us to operate in a certain way, to kind of look at things in a certain way, I always try to kind of bring it back to the client and allow them to kind of understand
Mhm.
that it's you versus you. When I was dealing with
Mhm.
my situation, I said, you know what? I'm gonna write my book because I know that this story is much bigger than me. There's other people that are feeling this. I told myself it's me versus me. And I
Mhm.
think sometimes that's one of the only things that you need, knowing that this is a battle and it's you versus you, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. And as I said before, your life was spared for a reason,
Yeah.
and I think you're using that reason strategically and brilliantly. So I appreciate that. I really do.
Thank you.
Eugene, I appreciate your time today. I know you're busy. I appreciate you just taking moments out and encouraging us and giving us a sense of, where you've been and where you're going. One more
Yeah.
time, give us the book title.
Resilience breaking the chains.
Resilience breaking the change. You heard it. Get out there. I'm gonna have you send me the link
Yeah.
offline, and we'll post that and get everybody buying that book. It sounds amazing, Eugene. Thanks
Thank you,
again.
Mark.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too, man. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.